Hi everyone. So I'm Hannah from Hannah Coaching, and I'm here on the Heart Centered Visionaries YouTube channel. And I am so excited because I'm doing a series talking to women that are highly sensitive and empathetic in business. And I think this is just a topic that we really need to raise awareness about, that our sensitivity really is a gift, and it's something that we can use it to help us navigate in our businesses. So today I've got the beautiful Hazel, and um, I'm going to try and pronounce your name. I should have asked you before how to pronounce it. Hazel Urquhart.
That'll do. That'll do.
Sorry, you can please correct me. So Hazel, as a little intro, she's the author of Discovery Through Art, and I know she does beautiful work like art journaling to help people gain insights from their art and help with mental health, which is amazing. I'm super passionate about art for mental well-being, so it's beautiful what you do. So welcome, Hazel.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I think, as I said to you just before, the topic of being sensitive is not talked about enough. And I think that's really important. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to do the interview with you. So,
Oh, beautiful.
yeah.
Well, thanks for
And,
saying yes.
and you did very well pronouncing my name. It's a bit of a bane. I still can't pronounce it properly myself. It's actually Scottish, Urquhart.
Oh, Urquhart.
Urquhart, yeah. Urquhart
Ah,
Castle is on Loch Ness in Scotland, and I still struggle to really, you need a Scottish accent to say it properly.
yeah. Oh, well, thank you for being here. And yeah, as you said, it's a topic that's not talked about, right? And I think so many of us in society has this kind of negative connotation of being sensitive, right? That I definitely heard I'm too sensitive or you're too emotional type things. So I'd love to hear a bit about like how did you find out that you were sensitive?
Okay, well, I think really looking back, I was really sensitive as a child, really sensitive as a child. And when I reflected on this, a lot over my life, one of the things I realized I had to do was I really had to spend a lot of time on my own. I had to sort of remove myself from my sort of family members, and I wouldn't call myself a loner, but it felt like I really needed that time to sort of just regroup myself and be with myself, because I felt like I just picking up all the adults, especially around me, their feelings, and in school, as well. It's like being in sort of big group situations, and even now I find that difficult. If I'm in a space where there's a lot of people, I can feel really overwhelmed by kind of energies of people.
Mm,
So
mm,
really, I think even as a child, I was very aware of that. But
okay.
it wasn't until and I think when I got into my teenage years, one of the things I did, I think, to cope with my sensitivity was, I actually started drinking when I was 13 years old. And I
Mm,
think it was a way of sort of just dulling my feelings down and dulling those sensitivities down. Dabbled in drugs a bit, did a lot of escapism stuff
mm,
throughout my sort of early teens. But really, it wasn't until I got into my 30s that I began to kind of think, I need to do something about this. I feel like I just need to get a bit more awareness about, because I had a lot of problems in work situations, and I kind of, I just felt like I was hiding a lot still as an adult. It's like I was very unconfident. So I sort of embarked on quite a number of years personal development work.
mm.
I kind of threw myself into a situation which was kind of quite radical at the time. I got attracted to a course that was run at Surrey University, and it, it, it said it was a kind of self-development course, but it turned out to be like 2 years of group therapy.
Oh, wow.
But what was really interesting for me was putting myself in that real intimate group situation with 21 people. I
Mm,
couldn't actually speak. I was so overwhelmed with being in that really intimate group situation. I think there's about 20 people in the group. It
mm,
took me probably about 3 months to actually feel I could talk without my heart beating really fast. And
Right. I know that one. I know that feeling. And thank you for sharing like all of those things, because I think that is so important, like acknowledging that we can pick up energy from other people quite easily, and there's that feeling of overwhelm with it. Um, and that's so interesting you're saying about that it took you time to open up. And I feel like this is something that we find challenging, right? Because we feel under the surface the energy of people and people's emotions, even if we're not conscious of it. And I know that feeling, right? I remember doing my astrology training and it took me ages to really open up as well. And you kind of get all nervous and the heart palpitations. And it's hard to navigate sometimes, isn't
yeah,
it? That
yeah.
speaking up as well.
Yeah, what was really, I think one of the things I really learned in that group though was one of the things I think is really important for highly sensitive people is to know your boundaries. Well, there's a few aspects to it. I think really developing your emotional intelligence, because it's like you're sensitive, but it's like, what am I feeling, kind of really getting to know is what's my sadness, what's my grief, what's my anger, what belongs to me and what belongs to other people. To sort of develop your own emotional intelligence is really important, because and that self-awareness, because that sort of helps you create the boundaries between yourself and other people. Because I think that's another thing that people who are highly sensitive struggle with, those boundaries. So sort of getting to know yourself and your own emotions is really one of the things that was like a huge step for me when I started kind of, learning about how to deal with my sensitivity.
I love that you mentioned boundaries. Yeah, I think it is so important, isn't it? And I think if we are sensitive, we've got to also have like those energetic boundaries. And learn to, like you say, almost name our emotions so we know when they're ours and when they're not ours. And I think it takes practice to really tune into what is yours and what is somebody else's. And I know that can be really challenging in business. I've definitely found that hard myself, right? When you have a session with a client and you're like, oh, this isn't my stuff. And you sort of absorbing like a sponge other people's emotions. I think because we care so deeply, it's easy to become a sort of sponge for other people's feelings, really, isn't it? So
Absolutely, yes.
it's great you've mentioned that. So how, kind of, what has helped you to put those like boundaries in place in your business?
Well, I think really it's about, like I say, the self-awareness. Also, I worked as a counsellor for 15 years, so I kind of, one of the things that was so invaluable was supervision. So I think it's really good if you're working in any way that you've got some side of outside support. In counselling we have supervisor, but I think if you're working with people yourself, it's really important to have a coach, because if you do get sort of sucked in, and you're not quite clear about what's theirs and what's yours, because you can come back after talking to someone and kind of feel a bit like, I'm not quite feeling right, is that me? And not quite being quite sure. But having that outside support and help can sometimes just throw a light on that as well, because it's like you say, it's not very empathic. I mean, I think that's one of the beautiful things about being sensitive, is actually we are very empathic people. We're very caring people, and we can pick up on so much from people, and help them in that way. But you can sometimes, without realizing, get kind of sucked in slightly. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think having outside support as well, that's somewhere where you can go to and say, not quite sure about, this, I'm not quite sure about this, and having another perspective on that situation.
I love that you shared that, getting that support from somebody that can just listen and you can talk to them. Because I think often like this journey is not easy, and I think it takes time to be vulnerable and actually talk about this, because I think for years I didn't really acknowledge I was sensitive. I knew I was deep down, but I wasn't talking about it till sort of really last year in the online space. And you realize there's many other women also that are highly sensitive that have their businesses, and it's beautiful because we can be in this community and support each other. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I
that
love that you shared.
that is really important. Yeah, and I mean, I'm just trying to think in terms of the things that's helped me.
Yeah.
Definitely just work. I mean, the whole reason I got into the art is because that was another way of me expressing myself. Because for me, sometimes also, I think because, you know, you talked a lot about energy, Hannah, and I think that's really important.
Mm.
Because that we don't kind of understand, you know, it kind of doesn't make a logical sense. You can't kind of put it into words that fit in a kind of logical way. So I started with the artwork when I was in the course in Guildford
Wow.
as a way of me expressing myself, you know. And I found over the course of like 2 or 3 years that I was there, I did hundreds of paintings. And it wasn't kind of art therapy, it was just me sort of putting stuff into paper, and then I could kind of take that painting and sort of bring it to the group, and it's like, this is, you know, this is what I feel. This is what it was a kind of safe way to kind of express myself. So that was my first exploration into how art helped me.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I get so excited you sharing this, because I think I also have had the same experience, and I think the art is so helpful to express what you can't put into words, right?
Yeah,
It's exactly that thing, and that's kind of like where, for me, intuitive art came from, is doing work, calling it intuitive art with clients, is just kind of expressing your emotions out into shapes and colors and words or whatever wants to come out. And it's like you say, a safe way to do that, in that maybe it doesn't always make sense to you, but you're just letting it out. It's an outlet, right?
yeah,
Which I think
yeah.
is so important, whether it's, I think creative outlets, right, is like
Oh,
for me, whatever it is, painting, dancing,
yeah.
singing, anything that people can use to actually let it out of their body. So I love that. And do you find that you've helped your clients with that too, in your in the art journaling?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I've done quite, I haven't done so much recently, but going back, I've run groups for women who've been sexually abused in childhood, and given a space for a weekend to just actually be creative. There was a bit of a process to it, you know, exercises, but just allowing women that space for a whole weekend with huge bits of paper, paint, you know, and just slowly letting whatever's inside out. And it was an amazing experience, I have to say. I mean, there was obviously a focus around abuse, but I've done it in other situations where it's just about allowing yourself a space, being with other people in that space, to just allow that self-expression, you know, in whatever form it comes out. I mean, I used to draw, a lot of mine used to come out in, I used to draw a lot of little people. I used to get loads of little kind of archetype images, like
Oh,
gods and goddesses and weird creatures, and you know, it was just felt like pouring through of the unconscious, you know,
wow.
giving people that space. And it's just beautiful to see. And people kind of go, oh, my goodness, I didn't know that was in me. You know?
Yeah. Do you know, I love that you're sharing this. I had this very similar experience, and that's so beautiful. You create that space for people, because it makes people feel empowered. And I think, like you say, if we are sensitive, we pick up on these subtle energies. And it's funny you say that, because exactly, like, women don't know what's in them, and I've heard it so many times, like somebody saying, well, I'm not creative, I can't draw or paint. And then you put this bit of paper in front of them, and I said, don't judge it, there's no expectations, and this just flow of creativity comes through them, and they're absolutely amazed at what comes out.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I recently did a course, and part of what I did was I kind of decided my little intention during the course was to explore my inner vision. And I gave myself, like, it was over 7 weeks, and I shared my process of what was coming out for me. And I had a huge piece of paper that I worked on for the whole 7 weeks, and just allowed whatever came out of me over that time. And it was actually quite, wasn't challenging me for to do, but to actually share that. But what was lovely was the women kind of went, wow, you know, I didn't realize I could do that. I could actually I can explore my unconscious world in that way, and just do art and just go along with it and allow myself to play with the freedom of the creation. And they really loved that, you know. And actually, the majority of them went off and started to paint, which was lovely.
That's
That I
so
actually
beautiful. I
motivated
love that.
to
Do
do
you know,
that, you know. Yeah, and already some of them are coming out with some amazing things, you know, not sort of therapeutic art, but just art for their own self-expression, and they're loving it, you know. So
oh,
yeah,
that is incredible.
yeah.
It sounds like, so that's one of your biggest tools to help you sort of express your emotions, being with, and does it help you, I guess, tune into your like intuition as well? Because I always think art is quite powerful for helping you connect with that, what your intuition is saying.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. It does. One of the reasons I love it is it just cuts through all the, you know, it cuts through all the stories in your head, you know, all the negative self-beliefs and the stuff that we've got there, you know, and but also the logic. I mean, even recently I've just finished another training course, which has been amazing. I've loved it. And it works a lot with images. But it's like a card deck. And one of the things that's really interesting, I'll just show one up to you here. There's a one there. And it's like, so, now the thing is, when we look at it, there's a word underneath it. Now, when you pick that card, our logical brain goes straight to the word. What does this image mean? You know, what does that actually mean? This card is actually called perspective shift, because it's a load of glasses.
Yeah,
It's about looking at things in a different way. But I found it really interesting that our logical brain goes straight to the words instead of the image. So part of what we do is also we cover up the words when, you know, we explore these images, because you get so much more from the image than you do. I love journaling as well, and that's amazing, but the art itself cuts through that sort of logical mind.
Yeah.
Gives you a lot more information, and you just have to go with it really and explore it a bit more, you know.
Absolutely.
And you find it's amazing what deeper insights you can get from that.
I love that. So as also, because I think what you're saying as well is, you know, us, when we're highly sensitive, we also have a lot of intuitive gifts. So since you've kind of embraced your sensitivity and really, you know, acknowledged it in yourself, do you feel like there's been you know, psychic gifts or intuition that has opened up for you?
That's really interesting, because one of the things I did when I was counselling, and obviously, you know, that I trained in person-centered counselling, which is it's quite a kind of, it's not a kind of structured, you kind of very much follow the person's process. And but a few times things happened in the sessions where I remember working with one woman where I just got this little kind of voice in my head going, ask her about her back, ask her about her back. And I thought, what the hell? You know, it was really strong. But it just kept coming to me. And I thought, you know, it is, I'm just gonna follow that, because it's strong. You know, it came through like 3 times, like, and I said, I think I'm a bit odd, you know, but I just said, I'm getting this little voice in my head. Actually, as it turned out, she had been having terrible problems with her back, which she hadn't mentioned, you know, before. Loads, and so much came out of that for her, about stress that she had in her life, and, you know, it was amazing. So I decided, you know, after that I would kind of follow these little hunches, even though you know, at the time they seemed like they didn't seem relevant in the moment, but it felt like it was intuition coming in, calling. I mean, whether you call it psychic, you know, I do like to call it. It sometimes feels like it's coming from somewhere, not from ourselves.
I love that. That's a
beautiful,
beautiful kind of example of following that hunch, that nudge. Like you say, whatever we call it, if it's our gut or if it's an intuitive nudge, it's just, I think it's so important for us, you know, as again, being highly sensitive, to follow that we
Yeah.
often don't know where it's going to lead, but I think that then
No.
opens up opportunities in business as well. And like
Yeah.
you said, you're able to help a client in such a deep way.
Yeah. I do know, one of the things I do notice a lot of women, the confidence, especially starting off in business, they're kind of, so it's like, dare I say that? Dare I say that? They're not kind of quite following that gut feeling. And I just say, just say it, say what's there, and, it's okay. And usually it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is, because if we don't trust ourselves, then who's going to trust us,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
And it takes time and courage, really.
Yeah.
And so in your business journey, you talked a little bit about the challenges of boundaries and this beautiful ability to kind of lean in and hear what's going on under the surface for people. What else has helped you kind of navigate that sensitivity, like in your business, like to be able to stand in your sensitivity in your business? What has helped you do
I
that?
I think practice. I mean, to be honest, even I only really started going online 2 years ago, stepping into a new kind of world of the internet, it was like, I really had to push myself. So I think it's probably about stepping out of your comfort zone, stretch, people talk about, not like jumping right out there. It's about just slowly stretching your comfort zone, actually taking, small risks, small steps, in a way, and just trying things out. So practice stuff. Allow yourself to take risks, but in a way that feels safe, not saying of pushing yourself too hard, but actually just go, yeah, maybe I can step out a little bit more gently and just take a little risk and talk about this, or share this. And so it's about baby steps, instead of kind of going, feeling like you have to just go, whoa, because it's tempting, isn't it? We see all these amazing people online, who are like, big and powerful characters, and we kind of think we have to be like them, but we're not like them. We are sensitive, and we need to take our time with things and take care of ourselves within that stepping out.
Absolutely. I love that you've mentioned that, go slowly, because I think, we do compare ourselves, and, there's nothing wrong with people that aren't sensitive. But if we have this trait, we've got to work with our nature, and our nature is not going to be to go like, whoa, I'm here, big and bold. It's not us. So we've got to learn how to do it in our own way. And I often use the tortoise and the hare analogy, that I've definitely realized I'm very slow. And so I see myself as a tortoise, but actually that's okay, because you'll still get to the destination, and it's about enjoying the journey. And as you said, taking those small steps that get you to where you're going as well.
Hannah, I think it's a thing for me that's really important, is about caring for yourself as well. That's so important, because early on in this process of going out, I did do an interview, and somebody asked me to do my life story in an hour. Life story in an hour, and it's like, to be honest, I really pushed myself too much. I really pushed myself. Because I was really anxious, and it wasn't like a two-way thing. I just went on and did it as well. So there's not like somebody there with me. And it took me a while, and I thought, what it is, that wasn't good for me to do that. It was like I kind of felt unsafe, the feedback was lovely, but it was like I had pushed myself far too much. And that was an important lesson, like you're saying, it's like, just be aware that, pushing yourself sometimes too much can also, be quite harmful to you, especially in the whole online world.
Absolutely. I think that piece you mentioned about being safe, or feeling unsafe, being safe is so important as well, if we are sensitive souls, because if we don't feel seen and heard in a space, whether it's in a community or group or wherever it is, then we're probably going to put our barriers up. You know, it's like a crab. It's like I was
Yeah.
the archetype of the crab.
Yeah.
I love using archetypes, and it's that crab has got a hard shell, but it's really sensitive inside. So
Yeah.
we put that barrier up to protect and defend ourselves, but actually then we completely shut down our beautiful gentleness and our sensitivity, which is who we are.
Yeah, it did. And it's funny because the lady afterwards who ran the group, you know, I said to her, that felt really difficult for me, you know, and she was quite, you know, people weren't aware that that was difficult to me because I kind of hid it quite well, you know, but it was like, yeah, actually, and it took me quite a while to sort of feel confident enough to stop going out again and doing any more interviews, you know, because I'd just gone, you know, too full on, really, too full on for me at the time. Yeah.
And I think that's a process, isn't it, of learning when you're pushing yourself and when you kind of lean more into that feminine energy. Because I know it's so easy for us to, oh, we've got this huge to-do list and I've got to keep pushing myself till I get to X, Y, and Z done. But again, I think for us highly sensitive women, we need more downtime. We need more space to process things because we feel things so deeply that it takes time, right, to understand what we feel about things. Which is, it's a journey, absolutely. And I'd love to know as well, like talking about energy and managing energy, do you have like self-care practices that you use to help you kind of manage your energy?
Yeah, well, I do, as I say, I do journaling, obviously I do the art, but lately I've been doing quite a lot of, I love guided visualizations, not so much meditation as such, but I do love, you know, different kind of, but lately I've been doing a lot more focusing on the body, on sort of body work. So I don't know if you've heard of Koya. It's a thing I've been well, I don't know a lot about the theory behind it, but it's basically a form of dancing, self-expressive dancing. And so I've been kind of doing online with that, but I'd love to try and find, there's not a lot in Weymouth, but I think there's maybe some, you know, I'd like to do more in-person stuff, but it's lovely. And it's about moving your body, and I suppose it's another form of self-expression, but kind of moving your body, you know, and things like, actually, I just learned about the full body and full body yes and full body no exercise that someone shared, and that was brilliant. That was a really powerful exercise, actually. And I think of anybody, I think it was a Joy Schultz, in one of the I think it's on YouTube. If you look it up, it's a really lovely exercise, and that again is about you know, being in touch with your body, I think, because that's quite it's grounding again, isn't it? Quite kind of grounding yourself. I mean, you can do it's brilliant, but it helps you kind of just say, okay, it's another tool to think, how can I, what's important in this situation? Do I want to do this? You know?
I love that you mentioned that, right? Because I think so often we follow the shoulds, and being sensitive, we particularly need to follow what our heart wants to do. And I love it. You know, I think dance is such a great tool. I always get my best ideas when I just move. Just put feel good music on and just move intuitively. I think it's so good for us as women, and almost to shake off old emotions, you know?
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of shake. It's like that's the other thing about you talked about managing energy. It's like, you know, if you've been in a situation, or you've been with a client, you know, actually, you know, shaking before and shaking off afterwards. Things like I love things like, imagine, you know, especially if I'm going out in a situation where there's lots of people, I'll do this like the bubble of protection thing, you know, around you, you know. So those sort of visual things as well, you know, that kind of help you feel like you're sort of protecting yourself in some way.
Absolutely, they do work. I love the bubble of protection. It really works. Wow. Thank you. Like, there's so much wisdom you've shared, and I could like keep talking about this all day.
Oh, thank you.
But I just want to kind of wrap up. So if you know, because I know it's really overwhelming sometimes on the beginning of this journey, you know, when you find out or you acknowledge when you're highly sensitive, and there's so much to navigate. So what words of wisdom would you give somebody that's kind of at the beginning of that journey that might feel, you know, a little bit overwhelmed, and they just don't know where to start with all of this? What would you say?
Well, I think, you know, really the first thing to do is kind of, you know, acknowledge that for yourself, you know, acknowledge and accept that that's how you are. But actually, I really think it's important that you spend time with people or a person who kind of will support you, you know, in kind of understanding your sensitivity. So getting support, I think, is the number one thing I would say to anybody. You know, don't struggle on your own with it, you know, actually reach out. It's quite hard. It is quite hard sometimes, you know, when you think, you know, maybe I'm like this, and you know, I'd like to understand myself better. So, you know, finding yourself a coach, a therapist, a group online of other women who are exploring, or, you know, where you can kind of open up and feel that you can share about yourself and share about, you know, who you are and your sensitivity. So I think that's the number one thing. Get help and get support.
Thank you. I love that perfect words of wisdom. It's so important. And I think as women, we find it hard to ask for help. So yeah, it's useful to have that sounding board, isn't it? That you feel seen and heard in.
Yeah,
That's
seen and heard, witnessed, I think is a really important. Yeah, yeah.
beautiful. Oh, well, thank you so much. It's been a joy to talk to you and hear, you know, all your hear about your experience and hear all the wisdom that you have on this topic. So thank you so much for being you.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Hazel.